Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to the closing ceremony of the 2023 Qiskit Global Summer School. Oops, I hear myself. Hold on. Okay. I hope everybody had a really good time taking all of the courses and interacting with the lecturers and the professors. I know this was a really fulfilling week for us here on the Qiskit team. So I just want to say again, congratulations for making it through these past 2 weeks. I know it can be really, really intense. And if you haven't finished working through all of the labs and lectures, no problem. You still have some time to do that. The Discord isn't going anywhere. The lectures are still available. So just take your time and make sure you're really, digging into the material. This is just a quick representation we made to show you that this really is a global summer school. We had 6,000 registered participants, and we sold out the summer school again for the fourth year in a row. Specifically, as you know, we wanted people to focus this year on transitioning from theory to implementation. And this back to basics approach really engaged a lot of different types of people than we had normally in previous years. So just as a quick snapshot here, you can see that almost a third of you had no prior experience with Qiskit, which is actually awesome to see because I think this is a really good first introduction to the material. About 2/3 of you are university or high school active students, and then 35% were active industry professionals. So it's great that we had this big mix of different personas. And as you can see here from all these purple dots, you really represented so many different places all over the globe, 112 countries, which is just awesome for us to see. I have to, of course, thank our planning team and our lecturers. This was a huge effort by so many people on the team, more than just the ones you see on camera, and more than just, John and I organizing the content. There were so many people working on the logistics that you can see here, like Serena and Alea, and of course, Brian. Va worked on the back end and helped run the code for all the labs. So this was a huge effort, and not to mention all of the video producers and editors who filmed all of the lectures and edited them and made sure we didn't say any silly mistakes on camera. It was a big effort. So please take the time to thank everybody. This was something that they did because this is an event they really, really care about. I hope that you took away some really important specific objectives from this past 2 weeks as well. I just put a couple things here that I thought might be, really specific things that we were hoping that you gain new insight to, such as your deepened theoretical understanding, of course, your ability to apply it to real quantum IBM hardware. And then I think also just a few other things, such as learning how noise works in a quantum processor, understanding what a superconducting processor even is, how do I deal with it when things aren't going the way I want and when there's too much noise in the system, and just identifying specific challenges in the field and figuring out, how can I, with my specific tools and insight, contribute to the field for the better. And I also wanted to thank everybody in our community who participated as well. I've been in the Discord all these past 2 weeks. Everybody, for the most part, has been so nice and so respectful. I love the memes. I love people finding out that John looks like Joey from Friends. Um, this has been a really, really funny thing to see. I've enjoyed following the memes very much. And thank you so much for everyone keeping a positive attitude and the good vibes going. Just some very closing reminders. The Discord server is going to be restricted. The content remains, but messaging is only going to be allowed in the general support channel. You still have just about a month for the deadline for lab submission. So you still have all 4 weeks. If you haven't finished the labs yet and you still want to turn those in and get a badge, you still have plenty of time. The Discord server is going to completely close on the 1st of September. And then all of the forms that are due, if you want the certification and the badge, is due September 6th. I want to just plug really quickly that if you want to keep involved with the Qiskit community, join us on Slack for sure. Follow us on Twitter. Follow IBM Quantum on LinkedIn. They also post tons of Qiskit updates. These are really good places where you can keep in touch and know about any future events that you might want to participate in. So just really, really quickly before we begin the panel, we're going to discuss our individual journeys in the quantum industry. We're going to answer any questions that you have from how do I get involved? What degree should I stay in? How do I contribute to Qiskit on this type of level? Nothing too specific, nothing too mathematical. I really want this panel to engage with you guys and help you in your careers and figure out where you go from here. So with that, I'm going to introduce our moderator for the panel, Abby Mitchell, who is our lead developer advocate. Hi, Abby.
Hello.
So I guess I'll just pass it off to you at this point so you can reintroduce me.
Perfect. Thanks, Olivia. Hello, everyone. I am your esteemed moderator for this panel. We're going to hear from all of your fantastic lecturers over the rest of the hour. We have a bunch of questions that you folks in the audience have pre-submitted to us. We've selected a few to go through. We also have some general questions. We're also going to be moderating the YouTube live chat as well. So if you really want us to answer something, stick it in there and we can see if we have time to get to it. And yeah, it's going to be a fun panel. Without further ado, I think I can call some of the panelists back. And what we're going to start off with is I would like everyone in the panel to take 30 seconds just to introduce yourself, tell us what you do, and what was your journey into quantum. And we're going to start with Olivia back again.
Surprise, it's me. Okay, so my name is Olivia, and here at IBM, I focus on education and advocacy, as well as some experimental work in my copious free time. I got into quantum by doing a PhD in quantum, I guess. But what led me to be interested in doing that in the first place is I've always loved physics. I knew I wanted to study physics, and I found quantum computing by accident. I didn't have a plan to go into this field, really. I call myself a failed astronomer. I thought that's what I was going to do, but it ended up not being for me. So then I found quantum computing, thankfully, and I like it a lot more. So here I am.
I'm surprised how often I hear that from physicists in quantum, that they went down the path of astronomy and then somehow ended up in quantum. I always find that interesting.
They lured me in with the pretty pictures, Abby.
All right, next up we have John.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Watrous. I'm the Technical Director for Education at IBM Quantum. I focus on creating educational content for IBM Quantum and I suppose providing direction in general for our educational mission. I've been studying quantum computing for a long time. I first learned about quantum computing in 1994, so it's almost 30 years. I was a computer science student. I did a PhD in quantum computing. I was a professor for over 20 years, and I moved to IBM Quantum about a year and a half ago.
Wow, this might scare you, John, but you've actually been doing quantum things since before I was born, which I find very scary. All right, next up, actually, it's me. It's time to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Abby. I lead the developer advocacy team here at IBM Quantum. And I got into quantum computing. I came from the classical software background. I don't have a background in physics or quantum computation at all. I got into this field by contributing to open source and contributing to Qiskit as an open source contributor. Yeah, that's pretty much what you need to know about me. Next up, we have Nick Bronn.
Hey everyone, I'm Nick. I am a quantum researcher at IBM. I pretty much do research and I work on the YouTube. So that's cool. I got into quantum because I did a PhD in experimental condensed matter physics, and they gave me a job to do quantum. Inspired.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Nick. All right. Next up, we have Kaelyn.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone. I'm Kaelyn Ferris. I am also a quantum researcher, so I do a variety of different kinds of research projects related to quantum simulation. I also I help Abby with a lot of the developer advocacy stuff, and the sort of journey that I took was I built up a background in theoretical condensed matter physics, and that was sort of like the focus of my PhD initially. And then as I was moving through, sort of ended up pivoting into quantum computing and trying to figure out where the sort of marriage between those two are. And now I'm here doing more cool quantum stuff.
Amazing. It's great to have you. Okay, and last but not least, we have Zlatko.
Thank you, Abby, and thanks, folks. I'm also just really thrilled to be here with you guys who've dedicated like 2 weeks of your summer, and I know it can be long and exhausting, but inspiring. So I hope you've really learned a lot and gotten a lot out of it. So what do I do at IBM? I guess I started our open source quantum hardware design software called Qiskit Metal. Led that for a while, then moved to do a lot more error mitigation and how do you squeeze the most juice out of the lemons we sometimes get. That's through the idea of understanding quantum noise, which you're all experts at now, and using that knowledge to turn it into something useful in order to do interesting experiments on the quantum computers, potentially pushing into a regime that no one has had access to before. So that's what I'm focused on now, which is looking at quantum experiments that we can do with these devices using error mitigation and trying to see what they can help teach us. How did I get into quantum computing? Also through a bit of an interesting background where I was very split between potentially choosing computer science or going down the path of physics, both two passions. And at that time, I ended up meeting a professor who said they do quantum computing. And I said, what's that? And they said, it's quantum and computing, which were my two great passions. And I thought, great, with physics and quantum, you can understand how things work at the deepest level. Maybe that can help you understand and get around problems that were once thought impossible. And computing, great, that's my other passion. What a lovely marriage. So that's that's basically the story of how these two passions coincided into one thing that I didn't even know existed at the time.
Fantastic. Thanks, Zlatko. You know what they say, when life gives you lemons, make quantum computers, right?
Where have I heard that before?
All right. Well, thank you, wonderful panelists. I think I'm going to, now that we've done our introductions, I think I'm going to kick things off with a question that we got from one of our summer school participants. Let me just apologize in advance if I mispronounce anyone's name. If you're in the audience, I sincerely apologize. But first up, we've heard a lot about how all of us got into this field from very different backgrounds. So I think this first question from Masa is a very good one to start off with. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but they ask, which degree should I pursue to get into quantum computing? Do I need to study for my PhD in order to work in this industry? I think maybe Olivia, you might have some interesting thoughts on this.
So first of all, I guess I would say, no, you don't have to get a PhD to study quantum computing. I think historically you kind of did, but the field is shifting, right? And in order to be a successful technology, if every single person in the field has to have a PhD, well, it's not going to be successful. So I think as the field expands and grows and as we progress, no, not every single person working here is going to need a PhD. And there are plenty of people on the team now who don't have PhDs either and are very important members of the team. But as for what you should study, I can't really answer that for you. You should study what you like. Certainly, there are some majors that are more well suited to quantum computing than others. If you want to, study English or sociology, that's harder. But if you're trying to decide between like math, physics, computer science, you should pick the one that speaks to you the most. It's not like it's easier to get a job with one versus the other. And I don't think that's a safe game you want to play anyways. I think you should do what you're passionate about.
I completely agree. And kind of bridging onto this, like a similar question that we had from Deepta is maybe for some of our even earlier professional, earlier students in their academic career are asking at undergraduate level, like what kind of courses do you recommend that people take? In fact, anyone here on the panel probably has a good idea of how to answer this question.
I could start taking a crack at it, maybe. So I think, again, it's sort of like Olivia's point, it kind of like very much depends on what you want to do. And many undergrad programs are really good at providing the sort of set of foundational tools that you need, especially if you're in sort of like math, computer science, physics, things like that. I would say like if you want sort of like, so I would follow those programs and then find different ways or courses that might integrate quantum computing or quantum information theory from those tools that you're sort of learning. In specifics, I think sort of like, the sort of like rigmarole of calculus, linear algebra, things like that sort of like gets you the sort of like foundational set of tools that you need to start.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I always am amazed by how much we actually pack into the summer school itself. I think something like what you get in the 2 weeks of just this summer school compares to maybe many weeks of an undergraduate kind of course in these kinds of areas as well, if I'm not mistaken. I see some nods.
Yeah, I mean, for just the first week, I mean, these first 7 lectures represent maybe 4.5 or 5 weeks of material in an advanced undergraduate course when I was teaching such courses. So it is pretty intensive.
Yeah, so I guess even if perhaps you're at a university that doesn't have an undergraduate course that is, very specific to quantum information, there are other resources out there online that can help you through it. Particularly the ones that we put a lot of effort into creating. Yeah, any more on this, on courses, what you should study, fields of study?
You should learn how to be a good writer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. I would agree. Yeah. Speaking from experience of trying to learn, myself, I very much appreciate when anyone can like communicate concepts clearly and succinctly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's definitely a skill that's sort of like learned over time, and it's not easy to do initially. Well, at least.
It definitely takes practice, and I would also say be a good coder, because that gets you very far, and there's a lot of things you can do with that. Also, probably linear algebra.
Just learn everything.
Yeah.
And Kaelyn, I think maybe this next question you would have a good insight on. This question comes from Harshit, who asks, what should a person keep in mind while going through an academic course, as it can be pretty difficult? I think we can all relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing I can sort of speak to most recently, I think among most of us, is the sort of grad school experience, because I think it's the sort of like closest in sort of recent history to me. For grad school, I would suggest perseverance is a really difficult skill, but is one that is really necessary. And the sort of guidance I would kind of like provide in that vein is make sure the thing that you're picking to do to sort of like pursue in grad school and really kind of like try to learn and develop how to hone your craft is going to be I've lost my train of thought now. So it's sort of like hone your craft and oh my goodness, I'm going to pass it off to someone else and then come back to this in a minute.
All right, Nick, what's your opinion on this?
Things to hone your craft? I mean,
yeah, or what advice would you give to a new student that's, trying to get through their first linear algebra course or, anything kind of quantum related?
I would say I would agree with Kaelyn, the perseverance is definitely important, especially for like PhDs and such. But I would also say that a lot of times the people teaching you don't remember how difficult it was for them the first time. So you just got to stick with it and, do your homework and practice, and eventually you'll get so good at it you won't even think about it anymore.
That's a really good point. And actually on a kind of on a tangent question, I think pretty much anyone could answer this, particularly I think Zlatko and John is like pretty experienced teachers and lecturers. What advice would you give to people, trying to teach people quantum? What advice would you give to other professors or even just, study group leaders or something based on your experience?
John, you want to go first, or?
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm not often asked for advice on teaching, but every once in a while it happens. And I have really three pieces of advice that I often give. And the first one is to figure out who are you going to rip off, and go ahead and rip them off. You can watch others and see how they're doing it, and that can really help a lot. And you go ahead and just rip people off and do what they do, and you can even steal their jokes. That's okay. The second piece of advice is you've got to work hard. Put time into things. I can remember hearing, or it's often told to say young professors, junior professors, you should spend 2 hours of time preparing for each 1 hour, 2 hours of preparation time for each 1 hour of lecture. And to me, that's just absolutely ridiculous. Start with 5 or 6 and see how you feel. And you've got to put time into it. And if you don't put time into it, you're not going to do it well. And I think that really goes for just about anything. And then the third piece of advice is never forget that your students are human beings and you're doing this for them. It's not for you.
And don't forget that your lecturers are human beings too. I'm speaking now to the whole audience. As you heard from John, it takes a lot of time to put these courses and lectures together. So I hope you appreciate all of the lecturers here on this panel today.
Yeah, and maybe I'll build off of what John said. And rather than ripping, I'm going to quote here, but I think Viktor Weisskopf's motto was that it's better to uncover a little than to cover a lot. And so I think the idea there, at least for me, has always been to try to bring it down to the essential physics. I think Edwin James said something along the lines of the goal should be not to implant in the student's mind every fact that the teacher knows, but rather to implant a way that enables you to think in the future. Because the things you learn, a lot of the things I learned in school necessarily they're no longer necessarily in of themselves that relevant to what I do today. But the way of thinking, the way of tackling the problems, that's really what's valuable and is transferable across anything I do at this stage. The other thing to make sure to do that, at least for me, has always been to try to allow time for questions and make things as interactive as possible. And I think as Kaelyn was saying, you got to have fun along the way, right? Because it is a long pace and it can be tiring, but hopefully inspiring.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because actually one of the questions that I would like to ask everyone, this might be a nice round robin question. What is the favorite part of your job? Olivia, would you like to kick us off there?
My favorite part of my job is all of the people that I get to hang out with and talk to every single day. I think everyone I work with is so smart and so giving with their time and their knowledge. And I always just wanted to be in a place where I could talk about, smart people things with intelligent people. And that's where I ended up. So, I'm just very grateful to be able to work with all of you.
Amazing. Anyone else like to volunteer the favorite part of their job?
I think for me, at least, it's the variety of things that I get to do, and the sort of rough freedom to really kind of pursue interesting questions for me to kind of explore, and also build connections with all of y'all and sort of get to work with y'all every day, which is cool.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think my favorite part is probably all the memes that come out of our events and summer schools.
Yeah. I guess for me, it's, I get to create things. I love that. I get to learn and grow constantly. So I feel like as much a student as a teacher, and and I get to share it with you guys. Honestly, that's the most fulfilling part. Finding the way is really hard and painful. Going the way is hard and painful, but showing the way that's where it's really fun and fulfilling.
I'll add a combination of Olivia and Zlatko's, because I knew from my grad school experience that I didn't really like working by myself, because I was working by myself all the time in the clean room, in the basement doing experiments. But the project I had where I worked with a lot of people was really where I found growth, because I could learn from other people, I could interact with other people, and that's kind of the best thing about IBM, is that interaction with other people. Other people are the ones that help you grow a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm the only one who hasn't gone. I mean, after Olivia's answer, I think I should change my answer. Of course, I enjoy working with people, and that's a great part of it. But what I was going to say before that is I think that the thing that I enjoy the most is writing. I think at heart, I'm really a writer. And so, when it comes to preparing these sorts of lectures and so on, for me, it starts with the writing. And I really enjoy that part, just kind of digging in and writing.
Incredible. And that's actually a wonderful segue because I have another question from that has been submitted to us from Melin. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, which says, I have read Dr. Watrous's book, The Theory of Quantum Information, with a true admiration. So clearly you're doing some pretty good writing in your career so far, John. And that question is, what can I do next as a mathematician who wants to remain on the theoretical side of things to enhance my knowledge and research skills in this field?
So first, thank you. That's a very nice thing to say. I appreciate that. I've worked with a lot of mathematicians. There's many mathematicians, pure mathematicians and applied mathematicians that are working in quantum information. I sometimes pretend to be a mathematician. I'm really a computer scientist, though. So I guess there's kind of two ways to answer this question. I mean, in terms of the topics, there's really just quite a lot. Just some examples off the top of my head. I think there's still quite a lot about the mathematical structure of quantum states, measurements and channels that we don't know. There's a lot of interesting questions in quantum Shannon theory, resource trade-offs. Understanding capacities of quantum channels is still a really mysterious, difficult thing with non-additivity and understanding this kind of things, this sort of thing. There's been a lot of focus recently, meaning maybe to the last 10 years or so, in sort of moving away from this kind of, many independent and identically distributed copies of a state or a channel, and looking at what happens in the limit, which is kind of the traditional Shannon theory approach, and looking at so-called one-shot quantum information theory, where true to the name, you have one state or one channel, and you want to understand what happens there. There's all these interesting entropic notions that connect with these things, like Renyi entropies, min entropy, smooth min entropy, stuff like this. Entanglement and non-locality, lots of questions there. Generalized resource theories. There's a lot of interesting mathematics that you could kind of characterize, like roughly, I guess, as maybe quantum combinatorics, where you're kind of uniting quantum information with discrete mathematics and things like graph theory. And I talked about non-local games in the fourth lecture of the school. There's a lot of interesting work in mathematics there that connects with really sophisticated mathematics, functional analysis and operator theory, stuff like that. So I guess that's kind of like the topics. I guess the other interpretation is what you...
Oh, sorry. Sounds like we've really just scratched the surface of everything.
It's so much. If the question was meant as what should I do instead of like what should I study, I would say probably if you've read my book or some other book or parts of it, you're probably ready to go on to research papers and try to understand what people are doing. That can be really daunting because it's just this huge, messy corpus of papers, and you may not know where to start. A great way to start, I think, is to look at the really key results, the key publications that interest you most, and do a reverse citation lookup. Type those into Google Scholar, see what are the papers that cited those papers, and look at those papers and sort of just follow the chain and try to figure out what people are doing like that. Figure out like who are the authors that you really like, that could, you find you somehow resonate with. Just as I could pick a million different, not a million, but many different people. Let me just pick somebody like Michael Wolff. I mean, I think his work is great. The work he does with his students. He's a person that puts 10 great ideas into one paper instead of turning one good idea into 10 papers. And so, you can just kind of follow what they're doing, and you learn new things. And when you see a new paper, a new topic, you can learn about this. And finally, talk to people. I think that's very, very important.
100%. I see a lot of like people on the panel also like nodding while you're talking. Does anyone want to jump off of that with their own experiences as well? Possibly Zlatko. I know you're also writing a lot of papers at the moment. Like, do you have any kind of recommendations there or things you would like to mention?
Yeah, life is what happens while waiting for manuscript review. No, I think earlier, everyone here kind of emphasized the importance of communicating. I think, especially with science, the goal isn't just to uncover; it's to uncover for other people as well. So the communication, as Olivia mentioned, writing, as Nick mentioned, also writing is very key. Presenting is very key, but you have to have something to write about, as John mentioned. And finding those niches can be a really exploratory thing. Maybe the advice, and I'm actually here in Boulder at a summer school on condensed matter physics, but the question that comes up a lot is, how do I balance that, right? Because there's so many things that I can go in the archive and find thousands of papers. I can find the people around me and talk to them, but there's more than I can possibly humanly take care of and manage. And at least what's worked well for me personally is to try to spend like maybe 70% of my 30% of my time trying to learn about as much of everything as possible, but then having the bulk of the time really picking one or two things that you try to commit to for say 6 months or 12 months, and you become an expert, or you learn as much as you can and do as much as you can in those one or two things, and then you can change that. You're not committing for life to this one thing. It's good to explore it, and it will usually give you a next stage from which you can bounce off of and leverage. And if you really want to know what's the latest, greatest in quantum computing, check out the YouTube seminar series on Friday at noon.
Time for that shameless plug, of course.
Yes, thank you very much, Paul, for don't miss a Qiskit seminar. For me, that's a good way that you get to see and touch on what's the latest. I've heard a lot of people from Israel, from Germany, from many places all over the world say that that's how they found their research topic and found an advisor that they liked on there, because you get to see the person, you get to see what they're like and talk to them. You get to hear about the research. You can also ask questions live and interact. And a number of people have emailed us and let us know that that's how they managed to find their next step in their career. So hopefully you find something like that.
I think you're touching on a really interesting point here, because there is already so many research papers out there. And I think people can sometimes struggle to come up with ideas. And in fact, we actually have another question from a summer school participant, Abdina, is asking, is the field of quantum information hard to get ideas for a PhD thesis or research papers? Maybe Kaelyn, I think you might be able to answer this question.
Yeah, sure. So I would argue that the answer is no, because there are plenty of really interesting and open questions in the field sort of broadly. The thing that I would say is that what's really important to help you kind of guide yourself into finding what research topic is interesting to you, or what kinds of open questions you want to try to explore, is, I think Zlatko touched on it earlier, which is finding a really good mentor. That's really helpful in sort of helping you kind of put your first steps into the field, and being able to identify and kind of see what the community as a whole is doing.
100%, I agree. And I think that advice kind of translates even beyond in whatever field you end up doing academically or professionally. Finding a good mentor is so important, no matter what area of life it is. We have some questions from the YouTube as well. I know some of them are kind of similar to stuff we've already asked, but there is one here. If I want to work on quantum hardware, how deep should I dive into the software? Nick, I feel like this is something that is probably right up your alley.
Well, that's so funny, because we spend a lot of time doing experiments by ourselves, and maybe writing some pretty bad computer code to automate those kinds of things. But even in building hardware, years later, when there was larger teams and more fridges, you really aren't spending your own time doing the experiments yourself. You're canning those experiments and coding them up and using them in a way that makes this kind of thing, this kind of field, scalable, so that you can get a lot more done. You can measure a lot more qubits. You can figure out how to build a chip and put it online. So I'd say even if you're into building quantum hardware, it's really good to have knowledge of a good code base, and like I would say kind of knowing how to use like Git and open source tools to be able to do your job, because you're really trying to automate away as much as you can.
Oh, and I think that's time for my shameless plug. I did a YouTube series as well on our channel on like how to get started with Git, GitHub, open source. I'm glad that even Nick from a hardware background kind of agrees with me on that point, that they're really important skills to have regardless of like what layer of the stack you're working on.
Exactly.
Okay, so next up I want to talk, we've spoken a lot about now studying and what courses we should do. But now I want to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about, developing your career possibly in industry. And this might be one for, well, I think quite a few people in this audience, in this group could answer. We have a question from Subham. How do you go from an academic setting at university level to working with companies like IBM with state-of-the-art research? Maybe Olivia, would you be able to answer this one?
I don't know. I'm not really sure what they're trying to ask, because the real answer is you apply and then you get a job and then you show up. But I know that's not what you mean. But I guess what if I had to like put myself in their shoes? I think the meta question is like, what are the differences maybe between academia and industry?
Yeah, that's kind of how I interpret it.
It's not that different. Like I think people really think that the differences between working in like an academic lab and working in an industrial lab are like so different. That has not really been my experience. My experience is that it feels pretty similar, only you don't run out of cables as much. Because IBM has more money to buy cables. I don't know. I really feel like if you're good in an academic setting and like you're a good team player, but like to be successful in academia, you have to be a good team player anyways. And those are the skills that really make you successful in an industry too. I don't know if that made any sense. Maybe Nick can add on more to what I'm saying.
I mean, yeah, I would think as you're a grad student, you would be examining the relevant literature in your field. If you're studying quantum information, then you're probably reading the same papers and you're aware of what IBM is doing, and the people that you will work with are aware of that. So you can really just kind of pick up and move and hit the ground running. You just learn about the way IBM does things, which is, a little bit more with an eye towards scalability, because we're building a quantum computer, which is what most universities are not.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think also, John, you've spent a long time in academia and very recently switched to an industry role. Maybe you have some thoughts to add on as well.
Well, so I'm a theorist, so I don't work in the lab, so I don't have that sort of experience. I mean, yeah, to me, it's very, very different. I have to admit that. But I'm coming at it from the point of view of a former professor, I guess a recovering professor maybe, where basically as a professor, nobody ever told me what to do. It was really kind of up to me, and sometimes think about the institute where I was working as like a company with 30 CEOs, so at IBM it is much more mission focused in a sense, and there is a kind of a joint mission, and there's from my perspective just a lot more working together towards common goals, and so I'm enjoying it very much. I mean, I've only been here for a year and a half. I'm probably the most junior IBMer on this panel, even though I'm the most senior person in a sense in terms of the field, but that's been my perspective.
Fantastic. Okay, a couple more questions from YouTube. Again, kind of like on this theme, maybe now kind of switching back to the other interpretation of the question, but how do you prepare from going from like being a student to getting your first job in industry or getting that internship? I'm just going to throw this one out to the whole group. I'm sure all of you have some thoughts. So if someone would like to answer this question, please go ahead.
Yeah, I can attempt to start again. So I think especially with there's a lot of questions that I have been asked about trying to navigate being a student to moving into academia, or sort of like an early career scientist kind of position, or moving from a student into industry. And I would say roughly the advice is approximately the same, which is to find good mentors and make good connections with people who have established themselves in some way. Find ways to perhaps contribute or insert yourself into various kinds of projects that you find interesting, and be able to demonstrate your ability to do interesting work and to kind of give a purview of what you're interested in working on.
Amazing. Anyone else want to jump in on that?
I think you should start creating a profile on the internet that people can search for you on, be that a GitHub, a LinkedIn, or a website. That really helps.
I 100% agree. And I was going to say, from a software perspective, my like top tip for writing your CV to get a job, make sure that you have your GitHub handle on your CV. I can speak personally as someone who has like hired intern and full-time people. The first thing I look for is a link to a GitHub, and I want to go and see the kind of code that you've written, even if it's just, you know, your own personal project. You know, if you have something up there on GitHub, then it gives me a sense for what kind of software you write, what your skill level is, without, you know, having to, you know, before we even get to the interview stage. That's a crucial thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Actually, that's a good point. So that's me coming from like a software mindset, but possibly for people that are going down more like the research road in terms of their professional career. Are there any like tips or advice that some of you more kind of academic people would give for like CV writing, or like little practical tips? Anyone have anything?
I think maybe I'll echo kind of what you and Olivia mentioned with, especially if you're already in the academic research world, you're most likely going to conferences, or you're lobbying your professor or advisor to send you to conferences, because that's where you'll get to see and meet, you know, people like myself and Olivia and John and Nick and Kaelyn and so on. And that's a great place to really get to, because you have two jobs when you want to get a job. The first job is getting a job. The second one is figuring out where you actually want to go and what are the options. But really, that one should come first, so you have a sense of the landscape and the opportunities that are ahead of you. And you know, you can read a lot of things online, and you can talk to a lot of people. You can be on social media, but then you can sometimes just, you know, make friends or connections, or get an even better sense of on the ground what's happening in a place by just interacting with people from that institution. So if you're getting to go to APS March meetings or other conferences, that's a really good place to connect and understand both the landscape and the actual place, because, you know, there'll be the technical part of it, and then there will be the part of it which is the other part of it, the life part of it, in terms of the people and colleagues you would work with. Usually those people would be also your best way towards telling you, you know, what really matters for getting a job here. Each place is a little different, and each place tends to change over time in terms of what they're looking for and what opportunities there are. So I think that's a useful place if you can get it kind of speaking on the ground.
Yeah, it's also such a fast-paced industry. Like, things change all the time, so making sure you're kind of keeping up with how things are moving is really important.
And don't be shy. Reach out.
Have confidence, for sure. There's a kind of in a similar vein, we've been getting, I think there's a YouTube question and some other kind of sub questions on that we've been getting throughout the summer school is, what does the quantum industry itself look like outside of academia? Is there enough infrastructure yet to, you know, have a real kind of like job market in industry? I don't know if any of us are kind of, well, you know, placed to answer this kind of quite meta question. But yeah, I'll just open the floor up again if anyone would like to jump on it.
I think, you know, it's starting to evolve to the place where there are product managers and project managers and analysts. Yeah, sure. Those exist. Not at every big company yet. I think IBM has those people for sure. Google, Microsoft does as well. Other companies that aren't building their own like quantum program, maybe not as much yet, but I could name a handful, and this list is going to continue to grow. So yeah, it's not just an industry that only has, former academics and hardcore researchers. There are plenty of people who came from a semi-technical background and are now using that expertise to be, a product developer or a manager. Yeah, it's growing to be a real industry.
Yeah, I agree. I think also what I'm seeing more and more is hiring for classical computational roles as well. Like I'm seeing more examples of people just hiring for like software developer, and they don't necessarily require an experienced quantum background. I think like that kind of stuff does help. But there's also roles out there because there's a lot of classical software infrastructure that is surrounding the quantum aspects of what we do, and we need people that are just regular cloud developers, software developers to help build that. And you don't necessarily need to have like a quantum background to be able to do that. And I think as these things grow more, you'll start to see more of the kind of traditional software kind of job structures emerging, where you have teams with product roles and project management roles and data analysts and things like that, kind of working alongside the more kind of research focused people as well. At least that's kind of the sense that I get.
I agree.
Okay, so we have about 15 more minutes left of this roundtable. Remember to keep putting questions in the YouTube channel. We'll make sure to try and get to as many as we can. I have one other question that we have pre-submitted to us from Yusuf, who asks, what are my next steps? What should I do next in order to be skilled enough to participate in things like hackathons and other Qiskit events? I'm going to broaden this question up. Now that people have gone through the summer school and they want to keep participating in these things, what should they do? I mean, I can give my own opinion about this one as well. Like for hackathons in particular, we've mentioned already getting experience with Git and open source and coding is a big one. So I'm going to leave it as that. But yeah, possibly Olivia, do you have any thoughts on this?
So I can't give specific advice on what that person should do next because I don't know who they are, but I can give some general advice on some options. I think definitely like join the Qiskit Slack, and you should start taking steps towards working on your own independent project. So that can take a couple different, paths depending on maybe what you're specifically interested in. But I think starting to sink your teeth into some real journals, some real articles, and some maybe more advanced textbooks, such as maybe, John's or Nielsen and Schwang is a good next step. And eventually you'll have the know-how and the knowledge to pick your own independent project. Find something that you're interested in. It can just be a toy example to start out with, or maybe just a paper that has already been published, but you want to try to reproduce the results in Qiskit or, another SDK. I think that makes sense as the next logical step.
Yeah, I think the thing that I'll bounce off of it really quickly is that this summer school, I think, has really given all of you the sort of foundational tools that you need in order to start actually diving into your own project. So yeah, Olivia's advice is perfectly apt here, which is to say, explore, find things that are interesting to you. You have at least seen all of the sort of fundamental tools that you need.
I think the Qiskit Advocate Mentorship Program, so if you can become, now that you've done the course, I think you can become a Qiskit Advocate. And there's a mentorship program that I think is pretty good that has a lot of IBMers leading projects, like small 3-month-long projects. to get involved as the next step. It's a little bit more structured.
Yeah, so the Qiskit Advocates, for those that don't know, is a group of it's a program that you can apply for. So I guess the Qiskit Summer School is like the first step in your kind of journey into this kind of Qiskit and quantum world, and then going on from that, you should kind of think about how else do you want to kind of contribute to the broader Qiskit community. And then the Qiskit Advocates program is a way to recognize people that have been particularly active in helping to sustain our community, helping others, whether it's through doing open source contributions or helping people out on Stack Overflow, Stack Exchange, leading your own student groups at your university, things like that. And then every summer, I think we've just finished the applications for this year, but you should start definitely preparing for next year already. There is kind of a window where we open it up for applications for like the newest cohort of advocates to join. And then one of the benefits of being part of the advocates program is getting able to network with other advocates. And as Nick says, like join the mentorship program. I think that's one of the best pieces of being a Qiskit advocate is we have a mentorship program specifically for that group to kind of get a mentor with other advocates or Qiskit maintainers, things like that. So yeah, start contributing now, start getting more involved with things over the next year, and then start applying when in time for next summer.
And also internships.
Oh yeah, internships. I feel like
those.
Yeah, would anyone like to take a stab at talking about our IBM Quantum internships, and when does that start kicking off?
Maybe I'll take a quick stab. We've had, I think, working closely with us a few interns over the last 2 summers, and basically all of them, we just put out some, pretty sizable papers, and the interns were actually a core driving piece of it. So even though the internships can be short, 12 weeks, and you apply, I think by Olivia maybe knows better exactly when the deadline is, but it's sometime in November, December. It's an incredible opportunity in that short time to learn a lot, to really see what life is like in an environment like this, and then to actually create potentially an impactful contribution to science. I've been shocked and pleasantly surprised by how much these interns have done. Some of them have done this summer school, and that gave them a huge leg up and ability to start. So I think you guys are well on your journey, and maybe we'll see each other next summer.
I hope so. Okay, I have one other question here that I think, John, you might be able to, actually anyone can answer this, but let's start with John. What is one piece of advice that you could give your past self when just getting started with your quantum journey?
This is the kind of question where if 30 minutes from now, I'll probably have a much better answer. But I would say be yourself and follow your path and think about what you want to accomplish, and don't let yourself get, pushed into a mold of what others want. I think that actually took me a long time to realize, and it is a part of the reason why I left academia and I came to IBM, because, I realized that there was something that I wanted to do, and so I realized that I needed to have a change of path, and follow what I really wanted to accomplish.
I think that's such a good point. And I notice a lot of questions from students focusing on this idea of like, what should I do? What course should I do? What, job should I get? And at the end of the day, like, you need to do what's right for you as an individual. You need to, like, yes, there are kind of like external pressures, like, yes, you need to, get a job to live and things like that. But when you do have the options to choose the thing that you are day in, day out gonna enjoy doing. Anyone else want to provide some advice to their past selves?
I would probably say to stop putting pressure on myself to learn everything in like a day or a week. I feel like I didn't like fully internalize quantum computing for like maybe 2 years maybe, and like there's plenty of stuff in the field that like I still don't fully understand. So the expectation to, you know, learn everything that you want to learn in just even a semester long course is it's probably too much. I think you have to really understand that this is it's hard. The material's hard. Like it's supposed to be hard. It's not just like hard for you in particular. And if you just give it time and you keep coming back to it, eventually it's really gonna sink in. But you just have to, you know, not give up. That's a little cheesy, but it's true. And you know, try not to get so down on yourself when things seem hard and confusing, because that's when the learning happens.
I mean, if you're not challenging yourself, then you're not growing, right?
Yes, growth is painful when your brain that's when it's getting better.
Growth is uncomfortable. I'll mirror that in a lot of ways too. I think one thing with regards to sort of like being comfortable with being with not really like knowing everything, I think that's sort of like a key piece to kind of like build up your confidence to kind of be in the spaces where there are experts in the room. You can learn from them, and don't be afraid to ask what you feel are dumb questions. Ask if you are confused on a particular concept, or there is just something that just isn't clicking. Ask about it, because very likely there are other people in the same room who have those questions and will very much value it being asked.
I will say also, just piggybacking off of that again, there is no such thing as a dumb question, but there are questions that you should have asked like way earlier. So
yeah,
it's not a dumb question, but if you're a 6th-year graduate student and you're finally asking a question that you probably should have asked your first year, but you felt like too insecure, like that's a bad moment. I know, because I've been there.
And I'm going to gently push back on growth is hard. I don't believe it has to be hard. I think
it's easy for geniuses like you, Zlatko. We can't all be like you.
Yeah, Zlatko's like, my brain has never learned. I don't believe this.
No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is, I think it's hard when you give yourself very little time. But when you spread things out and you remember to have fun along the way, I think, it's like playing a game. It takes a while to learn how to play the game, but it can be fun, and it can be enjoyable too. Yes, it can be painful and hard at times, but it doesn't always have to be.
I would kind of like, on a kind of like a similar tangent, like this is, remember to take breaks as well. Like have a life outside of your job or your academic, or course, whatever you're doing, because I think that's also like, and again, like Olivia said, like you can't learn everything like all at once, and I think you're going to be able to absorb the information much easier if you're giving your brain breaks to kind of go and do something else and then come back to things. Okay, we have 2 more minutes left of this panel. I want to take the last 2 minutes. Everyone has, again, I'm putting you under pressure, 30-second answers or less. We're going to go around with everyone. What are you excited about for the future of quantum computing? That is our final question of the panel. And I am going to pick on Nick to start us off.
So one thing I kind of keep an eye on is we have like larger and larger systems, and eventually like Zlatko does a lot of work in error mitigation to try and get the most out of those systems. And as they get better and bigger, you'll have quantum error correction, which will start suppressing the errors exponentially, but there'll still be errors and there'll still be resources involved. So I think what's really going to be interesting is this kind of spectrum where we're going from noisy architecture to fault tolerance, because it's not exactly fault tolerance. It's kind of like I think it will be more of a spectrum, and I think it'll be a lot more interesting because you can maybe combine novel resources in different ways that we haven't really thought through yet.
Great answer. And Nick, you get to choose the next victim to ask the question. I've done enough picking on people.
I'm gonna pick on Olivia.
That was coming. I feel like the thing that I'm most excited for is when one of the clients that we're working with or startups has, you know, experimental proof of an application that can be done on a quantum computer and applied to a real world project, and then getting to tell people I told you so.
Amazing. And you can choose your next victim.
Oh, yes. I picked John.
Well, I'll just keep it general, and I'll say watching the technology develop. I think we as humans are just terrible at predicting future technology, and just seeing how it changes and how it surprises us is something I'm looking forward to. 25 years ago or whatever it was, I don't think that we really thought that this was actually going to work, or maybe we didn't have that much hope. It was, it was fun to think about quantum information, but seeing it actually happen, I think, is really exciting, and it's going to be really interesting to just see what happens and what surprises us.
You've got to trust your experimental counterparts, John.
I do. I totally do. I suppose I picked the next person. Let me pick Kaelyn.
Sure. Okay. So I think the thing that I'm the most excited about is similar to John's answer in that I'm excited to see what's going to surprise us in the different kinds of insights, specifically in physics, because that's my background. I find that interesting. But broadly also, what kinds of new questions are we going to be able to start asking, or what kinds of insights are we going to be able to try to understand about particular systems or types of problems that we haven't really been able to try to get a hold of. So that's what is really cool to me, I think. And then Zlatko, I think, is the last.
Well, Abby should say. Abby has to.
Okay.
Well, Zlatko can go first. I'll finish this off.
You'll finish this off then. I'm charged up about the future of quantum computing. I feel like I'm in the superposition of exhilaration and anticipation. Largely because of what Nick mentioned, right? There's the vision of the fully fault-tolerant, error-corrected quantum computer, which can do amazing things, and hopefully most of them we haven't even found out yet. As Kaelyn was saying, it's the surprising parts that always get you. And in the near term, really, what can you do by understanding noise, error mitigation, and getting the most out of the devices that just get better and better because I trust my experimental friends?
So I guess the motto is trust your experimentalists.
Yes.
Okay, Abby, you have to go now.
Well, this is now unfair because now this is why I shouldn't go last. Now you guys have taken all the good answers. Okay, I guess I would say I'm looking forward to seeing more open source projects coming out of research that gets turned into code, or real world implementations of solving problems. I'm looking forward to seeing more scientific computing in the open source, the intersection of open science and open source, I guess is what I'm saying, and seeing more of that in the quantum field in particular. Okay, and without, I guess that's everything that we have today. Thank you once again to our wonderful audience for showing up here and asking such great questions. I've had a lot of fun, drilling all of the lecturers here with all these questions. And thank you very much as well to all of our panelists for being involved with this and for guiding us through the summer school for the last 2 weeks. That's all from us, folks.
Bye-bye, everyone.